Hi, Elisa. What's up?
Can we talk?
I've always got time for a chat with you. Let's chat.
All right. After the gin settles, let's do this.
Let's do it.
Hello, welcome to After the Gin Settles.
Hey everybody.
Back with Haidee and Elissa. Haidee, how's your week been?
I've had a really good start to my week. I went away with a couple of girlfriends. We had a escape the children weekend, and we're very irresponsible adults for the whole weekend. So it was fabulous. And then back into the expectations of motherhood for Monday. And what about you?
Yeah, I've had a pretty good week. I've been doing one day of casual teaching a week this term, and it was supposed to be my last one this week. And the kids had bought me a gift, not realising that I'd actually been asked to do next week as well, just to finish off the term. But it was nice to get a little gift. No, probably the best behaved they've been the whole term today. So that was a gift in itself, really. So yeah, no, pretty good week so far. The long weekend really helped, didn't it?
Yeah, and I actually had the whole long weekend off, which is bizarre, and I highly recommend. 10
Yeah,
stars.
yeah. I think what I found out the older I get is that I'm actually just not really built to work. Like it's just not really convenient.
Yeah, I have to say retirement's looking better and better, but those mortgage payments are not getting smaller anytime soon. So guess I have to keep working.
Yeah, yeah. We get these spate of weeks where things in our house just decide to die altogether. And last week we were having that week where we had quite a number of expensive items needing to be replaced. So guess we'll keep working, but they won't let us win the lotto, so that's a bit of
No,
a
no.
shame.
And what are you drinking for tonight?
I'm actually drinking the Streaky Bay gin that you had last time.
Oh,
So it's beautiful. First try of that one. What are you drinking tonight?
I don't know if you can see, but it's slightly purple coloured. So it's a colour change in gin. So it goes from purple to pink. It's the first time I've tasted this one. Highly recommend. Very nice. I can't
Okay.
remember who it's actually from, um, but I'm sure I can look at that for the next time.
Yeah, catch us up next time. So last week when we were chatting about pregnancy, miscarriage, and infertility, it's quite a heavy topic. So this week we've decided that we might do something that's a little bit lighter, hopefully a little bit more fun. But that's the idea of this week. So what are we talking about today, Haidee?
I think we've nicknamed it "Fuck Parenting Expectations." So it's just going to be see where we're going. But yeah, just throw all those expectations to the wind and see what happens.
Yeah, yeah. I think the best plan that you can have is just to trust your intuitions as parents and do what works for you. So what would be the biggest thing that you went into parenting thinking I'm going to do that or I'm not going to do that, and then it ended up when you were in parenting you realized that that expectation is just too much for you. What was the one thing?
Um, there was probably quite a lot. I had two non-sleepers, so I thought, being a neonatal nurse and getting other babies to sleep, I could get my own children to sleep. Huh, did they up me one? So two non-sleepers, unless they were in contact with one of us. Um, but my biggest one is I actually didn't like being a stay-at-home mum. It wasn't for me. Um, I felt really trapped. I felt really alone. And I became quite not a nice person. And so, very early on after I had my daughter, I realized that if I was going to survive as a mother, and I'd actually got such bad mental health that I wanted to run away. And I thought, if I'm going to survive, I need to go back to work because I needed to have something that wasn't just attached to me 24/7, that I could actually use my brain. I needed an adult conversation. And don't get me wrong, I had a mother's group. They were brilliant. I tried everything. It just wasn't for me. And I remember the day that I finally broke down and told my husband that I was just hating being a stay-at-home mum. And he turned around and said, I am dying to be a stay-at-home dad. And actually what worked for us is I went back to work at 3 months and he stayed home for the next 6 to 9 months, I think it was. And he loved it. He was out, he joined my mother's group. He was out with the every day doing walks with them. He had them at the supermarket and he loved it. And I became such a better mum going back to work because I could use my brain. I felt like I was doing it, what I needed to do. But also I was a breadwinner. So it made sense logistically for me to go back to work because it meant I was working less days than what my husband was to bring home the same wage. And
Yeah, yep.
we then did it with our second child as well. And I possibly felt a little bit in a better place. I probably could have stayed home a little bit longer, but he'd already quit his job. So I'm like, whoops, better go back to work. But I didn't regret going back to work. I was really lucky. I had a great breast milk supply. So I actually expressed and bottled both my kids well over 12 months of life. So I didn't feel that they necessarily missed out, and what they got was a better mum.
Yeah, yeah. On that topic, I was the breadwinner in our relationship too. I'd always earned more than my husband, our whole relationship. And originally when we were starting to discuss kids, it made sense that I would go back to work and he would be a stay-at-home dad. I, th- I think growing up, his dad did a lot of the caring for him. So I think that's how their family worked. I don't want to speak out of turn, but that's... and he was quite happy to have that role. Then when I had... as my career in teaching, and it took us so long to get pregnant, I started seeing having kids as an escape from being a teacher. So I started thinking that maybe I did want 12 months off, but the plan was still I would have I think with teaching, maternity leave, and then the Centrelink one, all up, it ends up being about 10 months of leave if you do it at half pay. So still the idea was that I would take 10 months off and then my husband would take some time off as well. Then when I had my kids, I ended up developing postnatal anxiety to the point that I couldn't put my son down. So I then was like, no, I need to be at home. I need to control this. I need this. And I did have a mother's group, but it actually caused me so much stress leaving the house. I didn't have a sleep. My son was a terrible sleeper. So on 2 hours sleep of broken sleep after being woken up 10 times a night, the last thing I wanted to do was go and join a mother's group and have coffee and see all them because they seem to be flourishing. They're all like, oh no, they're sleeping through the night now. Like, okay.
Talking about, like, I loved my mother's group, and I'm still really good friends with one of the mums from mother's group, and we've formed a really good bond. But we sort of broke off from the big mother's group until I think it was about 6 of us. And it was a running joke because my child, they never saw sleep. She would be up, crawling around, interacting, while all of their other beautiful little babies fell asleep for their coffee, and I was wrangling this child. And in fact, she did fall asleep once during the whole time we were at mother's group, and they all took photos like she was a monument because they're like, oh my God, she does sleep. And I'm like, yeah, occasionally.
Yeah.
So it became a running joke that my child was the strange one. And it actually, as much as this group was beautiful and they just accepted, it became really hard to watch other people say, oh, I had such a bad night. We only had 8 hours sleep. And I'm like, my God, I think we had 8 minutes in a row.
Yeah, I've got like really good friends. I've got one really amazing friend who lives away, but our parenting experiences were almost like exact opposites. And like she had terrible morning sickness and stuff, and I didn't. And then she had really easy births, and then I didn't. And then I breastfed really easily, whereas she really struggled and ended up having to formula feed. That was really hard for her. Yeah. she had sleepers from, I think they were 3 weeks old and sleeping 12 hours a night. And it got to a point where I was like, I love you. I don't want to hear about your kids' sleep.
Yep.
Like, I'll just pretend. And then her second was okay sleeper as well, but there was one night where she'd been up 3 or 4 times. And she started complaining to me, and then she's like, oh, I'm so sorry. This is like the wrong person complaining to after your son. It's been up to, I was like, it's fine. Like, to me, I'm now used to it, having so little sleep. To you, it would feel like an absolute nightmare. Like,
And I was so convinced that I'm like bad sleeper number one. The second one has to be a sleeper. Like, it's like gotta be.
I
Oh,
did the whole, I'm not teaching this one to sleep and then having another one and starting again. If we're going to have another one, we're going to do it when no one's sleeping. Because no, it's just everyone can not sleep. I don't give a crap anymore.
I genuinely thought, okay, and we were going through infertility treatment. I remember sitting down to my obstetrician going, oh, I don't know, but can we pick one that sleeps? And he just went, like, no, I'm really serious. But, oh my God, that child upped it. Like, my son, I genuinely thought it can't get worse. Oh my God, it could. And he probably slept a little bit better during the day than my catnapping first, but overnight he was a terror.
Yeah.
And I remember so he would have been a little bit older, but he would be up and we would do everything to try to get him to sleep. And he loved watching the Richmond Tigers. And so we'd end up, doing everything we could. And then we'd put that on. He'd watch the whole goddamn AFL Grand Final game in the middle of the night. I'm asleep. My husband's asleep. He's sitting up watching. Like, that kid just did not need sleep.
Yeah, no, my first absolutely didn't need sleep. And it was like, I think he was about 4 years old before he actually had a first night sleeping through the whole night. And even then it was like, I think it was only 7 or 8 hours that he slept in total. But we would swing from being up every 40 minutes, being able to get him down, to the next night he would wake up and be up for 3 hours, 3-hour block. We would drive to Macca's most nights. We would then come home and watch Disney movies. And then I'd get people who are telling me, well, that's why they're not sleeping, because you're putting a TV show. No, it doesn't matter. I could sleep I could just be lying in the dark for 3 hours while they're running around a room. I'd actually prefer to chuck him in the car, because he did sleep occasionally. He'd fall asleep in the car. So you're like, I'll give that a crack. I'm just going to try everything.
We probably never did the car drive with our first, but we definitely did it with our second.
Yeah.
And I remember pulling into the carport and like he never transferred. Like you touched him out of the car seat, it was done and dusted. And I remember just going and getting a blanket into the driver's seat and just falling asleep, because some sleep was better than no sleep.
Yeah.
And you're told everything. Don't just sleep train them, go to sleep school, don't do this, don't do that. Me personally, I could never do a sleep training. I feel if they're crying out for me, they don't have a voice. That's the only way they're using it. And I just didn't have the strength or the guts to do sleep training. And I thought it was for me, if they needed me, they needed me. But nothing worked.
Yeah. We did go to some sleep classes in Mildura. They don't have the sleep school here. And I remember sitting and saying, oh, look, we got all the information about sleep training. We tried it for a week. Nobody slept at all for a week. And he was crying so much he was throwing up. And it was just horrific. And I'm like, and it's not better. It's worse every single night. And I'm not doing it anymore. I can't do it anymore. And there was other people in the session who were like, oh, it really worked for us. And I'm like, congratulations, have a cookie. But it's not working for me. And we've already been in this phase where we got all the SIDS information, that's fine. But even the first day that my son was born in the hospital, because I had a C-section, it was a 3-day labour. I hadn't slept in 3 days. The midwives came and took him so that I could have some sleep after they sent my husband home at like 2 a.m. They were like, you have to leave, sorry. So they took my son and stood, they took him over to the nurse's desk, which was the furthest away. I had the room furthest away. And I could still hear him screaming. And he screamed the entire time he was away from me. And the midwife came in and she's like, we are not supposed to do this. And I am not recommending it to you. But I'm just going to tuck him in here beside you. And that's where he's happy. And that's the only place he's happy. Okay? Because everybody else needs to stop hearing him screaming.
That is so similar. So with my first, I was in a private hospital and they had a night nursery and I was like, no, she's never going. Like she's going to be with me. Anyway, we nicknamed it the Naughty Baby Nursery because the midwife stormed in, picked her up and she's like, everyone needs to sleep. You need to sleep. She needs to sleep. I will get her to sleep. So we went to the Naughty Baby Nursery, as we nicknamed it. She came back on her belly with the midwife saying, I know this is not how we're meant to do it. But she did not stop crying. And this is the only way that made her stop. So, oops, she's on her belly. She's finally asleep. I'm not touching her again. And I'm like, well, I'm not touching her. And so that's how she returned from the Naughty Baby Nursery. And that was kind of like day one. So I knew I was in for a ride.
Yeah, and then that was it. Like, my son just wouldn't sleep unless he was touching me. We did, like, because I read all of the SIDS information and I understand how important it is. And there was like a little graph that's like after 6 months, the risk of SIDS like plummets.
Yeah.
We got to that 6 months by having a mattress on the floor and having him propped up because he had reflux and colic. So he was propped up on some cushions majority of that 6 months, and my husband and I just sort of took turns watching him as he slept. And then at 6 months I was like, rightio, you can just come in here, and we co-slept from then until very recently. We've decided that he can maybe sleep on his own. But he's not sleeping on his own because my children are sharing a room because that's what they want to do. They love each other. My second, though, is a sleeper, and she was born naturally, not by C-section. And she came out perfect, had a feed, and then I put her beside me in the bassinet and she just slept. And I remember looking at her in the hospital and I think I was so depressed. I was like, do you not need me?
Yeah.
Like, what is wrong with you?
I mean, having met her, she is pretty goddamn independent.
She's just so independent. And that's how she's been the entire time. We do we sleep in the same room as her, but she barely ever liked being touched once she was asleep. If you so much as went near her, she was such a light sleeper, she'd wake up if you touched her or anything. So you're better off not being in the same bed as her. Yeah. But she also, like my son, breastfed until he was 2, and he only stopped because I got pregnant with my daughter. Yeah. And your milk changes like you could tell that he was like, what's wrong with your milk? Yeah. That's the only reason he stopped. My daughter at 11 months went, no, I'm right, thanks. And she just, that was it. She didn't even need me to get to sleep then. So it's funny. Like, we lie next to her now because she wants us in the same room to fall asleep. She doesn't want to be lonely, but she very rarely wants to be touched. Whereas my son was like this leech on me the whole time.
Both of mine were leeches. Absolute leeches. And I mean, my daughter is now 13 and she's in her own bed. It like, for those out there who are struggling, eventually they sleep in their own bed. But even as a 13-year-old, she still spends the occasional night in our bed.
Yeah.
Which, I figure eventually it's going to stop. But if I'm her safe space to fall, then that's okay. But it's interesting. I had a lot of guilt because I taught at work about safe sleeping, and you never co-sleep, you put them on their back, and all of a sudden I was thinking about breaking all the rules because I needed sleep. And I, in some ways, wish that there was a middle ground where they could teach. And there is some literature out there about safe sleeping, and you don't have them in the same blanket, you don't have the blanket that can cover them. And I'm certainly not saying that you should co sleep because it's safe. I'm not saying that. I'm saying what I did was because I absolutely needed to survive.
Yeah.
And I think if you are going to go down the path of co sleeping, that you should have the education on how to do it the most safe way because it is risky.
Yeah, yeah. We actually didn't have blankets on the bed
Yeah.
when my son was really little. My daughter would sleep in a bassinet, so that was fine. There was no blankets, no pillows. And I actually think when I started co-sleeping with my son, I didn't have pillows either. So it wasn't relaxing.
Yeah.
But you could flop your boob out and do a self-serve system through the night. But my kids, like you were saying, you went back to work at 3 months. I found pumping milk really hard.
Yeah.
My kids never had formula or anything, and pumping, I just couldn't pump. Like I'd get a couple of mils each time. I could get colostrum really well before I had them, and then pumping milk was completely different. And I tried a couple of different pumps, it just wouldn't work. So even when my son went to, when he started daycare about 12 months old, I would pump enough milk for him to have one feed during the day. Then he wouldn't drink it. And after a while, I was like, I don't know what I'm doing to myself because I'm spending up to an hour pumping, absolutely sore as anything. He's not even bloody drinking it.
Yeah.
So in the end, we just didn't bother. I'd give him a feed right before I dropped him off, give him a feed when I picked him up, and he would just have food during the day.
Yeah.
But that was one thing that I just wasn't able to do very well.
I was really lucky. I found breastfeeding pumping so easy. I was a bit of a dairy cow and almost had a bit of an oversupply. And both my kids could go from boob to bottle in the
Yep.
same feed and they were fine. They both never had formula, and that's not because I was against formula. I just made so much milk that it didn't matter to me. I planned to do whatever I could do. So if breastfeeding was fine, then that's what I was fine. But also, we were very happy to go down the formula route if that was what we needed. But I did work in a NICU, so I had access to the hospital pump. So, going back to work, I could just, go to the breastfeeding room and pump away. But yeah, I pumped until 12 months with both my kids and then stopped pumping, and they breastfed with whatever milk was available up until I think 15 and 18 months for both of them.
Yeah.
But I do think that there's a big stigma on having to breastfeed, where I think if that's what you want to do, I think you should be supported, but it shouldn't be the be all and end all. I think
Yeah.
is best. And yeah, I was just lucky. Like, as I said, I was a dairy cow. There was no
Yeah.
supply issue, but I also didn't have any issues with pumping. I was really lucky.
Yeah, I think that I'm really lucky as well that breastfeeding just worked and we didn't have to formula feed. I have a few friends that really struggled, really tried, did all like the medications and pumping and had
LC involved.
yeah, and everyone involved and it just didn't work. And I remember one friend reached out and she's like, I'm just standing in a supermarket crying. And I was like, what's going on? And she's like, I went to my maternal and child health check. My babies aren't growing. They're apparently just not getting any milk from me. They're hungry all the time. And I need to buy formula, but I have so much guilt about formula because everyone's always told me that breast is best and I'm trying my best. And I was like, you know what you're going to do? You're going to pick up the first formula tin you can see, put it in your trolley, and let's go because your baby needs feeding. And if people are going to judge you, fuck them. Like, they were going to judge you no matter what the fuck you did. Like,
They're gonna judge you for breastfeeding in public. They're gonna judge you for
yeah.
using formula. You're gonna get judged. I don't understand why we can't be nicer to each other, to be honest.
Yeah. I actually got judged for exclusively breastfeeding as well. I had people close to me that told that what would they say? That I was not, I was hoarding my baby's attention or something. That I should have.
You're selfish because the father can't feed because you exclusively breastfeed.
Yeah, yeah, or like, you know, I'm setting a rod for my own back because now no one can babysit because they can't have a bottle, and I'm like, that's all fantastic, but one, I don't need people to be coming and taking my children every which way. I'm quite happy to be at home. I'm quite happy to be with them. If I need someone to help out, I will make it work. But there's no necessary need for me to be introducing something to them that they don't need when I'm taking resources away from babies that do need it. I think you also did what's it called? Reusable nappies for your first.
We did. We were very eco-minded for our first. I don't know.
Well done.
They worked really well for our first. We had a great system of reusables and washing, and actually found them really easy. They and so we used them. I can't remember when we stopped using them. I don't know. We used them right up, and then my daughter actually was really easy to toilet train. So she was toilet trained at about 12 months. She just overnight went, okay, I'm ready now. Thanks, bye.
Yeah, love that for you. Hate that for me.
Yeah. Well, that'll be a whole nother episode. I think we used them right up for 12 months, and then with our second, we started using them. But no matter what we did, he would leak out the sides. It just, we were going through clothes and clothes. So we actually swapped to disposables because they just weren't working for him. And I didn't know whether they'd just been used so much with our daughter, but then we got a new one and a couple of new ones, and he was still leaking out the sides, and it just didn't work. But yeah, for our first, we were very eco-minded. I don't know whether we actually saved that much of the environment though, with like how much laundry and washing we did, but I like to think we tried.
Yeah, I researched the reusable ones because I'd changed your daughter, and I was like, they are easy to use, but the outlay cost, and then I was like, oh well, the washing and this and that, and I'm like, I just don't know, and then it was like our son had been born by then. I hadn't made a decision, so it was like 6 months down the track, and I'm like, and he grew. Like, my son was born big and he grew so freaking fast. Then I was like, oh, by the time we've bought them, he'll be grown out of them, and then we'll buy another lot. And it's just, I just did it. And I think as a kid, I was probably more of an environmentalist than you. So it's a real surprise that.
Yeah, absolutely. You definitely were. So it is surprising that was flipped and reversed on that one. But I think, we definitely tried to be a bit eco. But I think with the second, you're just so tired and running around that it just didn't work for our second. And that's okay,
Yeah.
we tried.
Yeah. I think,
what's some of the other parenting expectations that you kind of threw to the wind?
Oh, we were definitely, me, I was definitely like, no screen time. As a teacher, I can see the damage that screen time does to kids. And I was definitely like, oh no, we're not going to do screen time or whatever. And they're not going to have a tablet or anything in their face. Not going to throw them the phone. And then you're running on an hour and a half sleep, and they keep touching you and talking to you, and you realise that can you look at this thing for a bit? Like, I'll put Lion King on. I'll put one of the educational shows on with some subtitles. You can learn to read, and I'll justify this any way I can just to have a minute's rest. Or Bluey episodes while we watch TV. That's at a perfect time. and it all went out the window. And now they are definitely watching too much screen time. But you just, I don't know, I need a break.
I think survival.
But
it comes down to
yeah,
just surviving. And that's why I think we titled this episode Fuck Your Parenting Expectations, because
yeah,
a lot of what even you and I thought we would do then got thrown to the wind because we were just trying to fucking survive.
yeah. You just need to get through it. And it sounds awful because at the same time, when you're in the moment and like I love those videos of people like sitting in bed looking through their photos on their phone and you're like, oh, look at how little they are and they're beautiful and they're amazing. And then the kid walks in the door and you're like, oh, go fuck this, like, just like, I like you in the photo, just leave me alone for 5 seconds.
You're not touching me in the photo. You're not saying, Mom. And it
And you
sounds
do
like
love
whinging,
them.
and I love my kids. I would never, ever change it. They've been the
No.
best things that ever happened to me. But sometimes I need to not hear the word mum and not be touched.
Yeah. It's just you don't want to miss moments. You don't want to miss taking them on holidays and doing experiences with them or anything like that. But sometimes the daily routine, especially when they're little, and I found like that time about 4 months old, both of my children were grabbing food out of our hands ready to eat solids. Yeah. And when my son was little, we'd gone to the parenting classes, they'd bought like the food person in, and they're like, do not start solids until they're 6 months old. Well, he was finding food himself at 4 months. So we introduced solids, mash and whatever then. And as I was saying, my son grew so fast, he needed the extra food. Like, he's a beanpole. But we'd already started that. So we went to one food thing, don't introduce anything until 6 months old. It's so dangerous, rah. Then we went to the next one, which was we went to another one at 9 months, I think they were. And they're like, oh, the recommendations is that you start at 4 months. And I was like, how did the recommendations change? And in between, we've all missed out on this memo. And
did you get that you meant to introduce one high-risk food a week, but then have them all done by 12 months? And, we started doing that with our first, but then I'm like, hang on, there's not enough weeks between now and 12 months to get all the allergens, all the potential foods in. So I guess I just do a couple, and then if she's allergic, we then just do one at a time. It's like, oh my God.
Yeah. And that's another area that I was so lucky in. Neither of my children have allergies to any food. My son has asthma and gets really bad eczema and stuff to environmental factors, but not to any foods. And we don't have any intolerances either. My daughter is a shocker eater though. So as long as it's white or beige, she'll eat it. But we're really lucky that they haven't had any reactions. But I remember that first day of being like, oh, what food am I going to pick? And I think we went with eggs for both of them to start with. Yep. And it's so terrifying because they're like, if they've got anaphylaxis, they'll have this reaction. You've got to get them to hospital. And I do know people whose children did have severe reactions to food. And it's really scary. It's just... but it's not one of those things that I ever experienced. Your kids don't have any allergies?
No, nothing at all.
No.
And in fact, so really good with my first. Very, did all the proper foods, and then kind of after a few weeks threw it in and gave sort of a couple of new foods in the one go. But my son hated the car, so I would scream every time we got into the car. And we'd just done rice cereal. And so that was like food one. And then we're driving down the freeway, 100 k's an hour, and he finally goes quiet. And I'm like, to my daughter, is he okay? And yeah, Mummy, he's fine. I'm like, why has he stopped crying? Oh, he wanted a cheese and bacon ball. I gave him one, Mummy. And then my turd head of a child goes, And I'm like, is he okay? No, he's turning blue, mummy. And so I'm going at 100 k's an hour, and I'm like, what? Trying to get over 5 lanes of traffic to get to the side. And I'm like, is he really turning blue? Is he really turning blue? No, I'm just joking.
So funny. Well done. What a joke.
Hilarious. So yeah, his second food was cheese and bacon balls, which I'm pretty sure breaks every food standard you could ever have. He, on the other hand, having a great time.
Yeah. The first food that my daughter had was toast with jam, and that's all she'd eat for ages. And that's because she picked it up off my plate and was like, I'm eating toast with jam. And I was like, oh, okay, guess we're having solids now. I'll go into, I think, my laugh of the week, which leads really nicely into the last thing that I'll say that I changed my mind on when I became a parent. I do my casual teaching day at the same school that my son goes to, and he loves it because I get to be at school with him. At the end of the day, he comes into the classroom and we leave together, and he comes in and just the first thing he says, he's like, hi, Mum. And I'm like, hey. And he goes, Nanny told me, our mum, Nanny told me that if it's just a short trip, you can sit in the front of the car. And my son is 7, so he's not ready to be sitting in the front of the car. He's quite tall, but he's like almost out of a car seat, but he's definitely not tall enough to be in the front of a car that has an airbag. So I was like, does she now? And he's like, yeah. Nanny Lynn said if it's a short trip, we can sit in the front of the car. And I was like, well, I'm just telling you that that's wrong. Not. Nanny Lynn is wrong. You are not to be in the front of the car. Doesn't matter how far it is. You need to be in your car seat in the back. And he goes, oh, well, I've already done it. I'm like, have you now?
Have you now?
And I think like our family, we've got our faults, but one of the things that I think we do well is just directly running into a confrontation where we're just like, oi, what's the go? So I messaged our mum on our group chat and was like, Patty says, Nanny Lynn said that. And she's like, I did not. And I was like, well, he says you did, and he says he's already done it. So what's going on? And she a couple messages later, she's like, oh my God, I've remembered what happened. So they've got a little coffee van that parks, I think it's 3 doors up from them.
I don't even know.
And she did.
It's so close.
It is close, yeah. And she did. She put him in the car because it was raining, so they didn't want to walk up, and drove him up there with him in the front seat. And got their coffee and went back home again. And I was like, well.
Well.
The truth will come out. Like, can't do a thing.
You have been absolutely dobbed in.
Yes, my son can't remember what he did at school just then, but he can remember, because Mum and Dad have been away caravanning for about a month now. He can remember about a month ago when you put him in the front of the car. So let's not do that anymore.
Let's have a discussion about new.
But in saying that,
go on the road that's that close. Like,
on the dirt.
Not that I'm saying it's okay, but I'm just thinking it's so close. Like, literally, it would have been, 2 doors off or something crazy. Right back.
Yeah. In saying that, I am not the shining light for the person who did car seat safety correctly. So we had when my son was about 9 months old, your son had been sick for a little while, and we'd started doing trips to Melbourne and back to make me to see him. I'm not sure we had a diagnosis at that stage, but we were doing a lot of trips, and at 9 months old we had to make the choice of keep him rear facing for 7-hour drive to Melbourne with him screaming, or turn him around, he can see us, we can throw him snacks and not have the stress. Yeah. Not have the stress of him screaming the whole time. Not that he did. He wasn't too bad in the car, but on those long trips he would get himself into a state. So at 9 months old, we turned him around because that felt like the safer thing for us to do. He was also tall. He was also at the marker on the chair. I'm going to caveat that. I know I've done the wrong thing. It's okay. Don't come for me. But I've got friends whose children are over 2 years old. They're still rear facing, and it's fine for them. Their kids aren't making a fuss. My daughter hated the car. Like, just hated it from the moment she was born.
Hated it as well.
And she would scream constantly. And I think she's quite little, though.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's little, though. But we did still wait until she was right at the markers and whipped her around. I think, I feel like she's about 14 months old, which is not what's recommended. But that's we did what we needed to do with the situation that we had. And at the moment, it's worked out for us. But Nanny Lynn is not putting my son in the front of the car and driving.
Nanny Lynn's in
Driving.
trouble.
But I know people who, teaching. Kids turn up all the time, sitting in the front of their car, not in booster seats, tiny little specks of kids. And it's really not safe. Like, if the airbag, and it's all about the airbag, it's not about anything else. If the airbag goes off, then it's actually going to hurt them more than if it doesn't. But I don't know. I'm still, you do what you need to do at the time. And there was, me and another mum at Mother's Group who also did the same thing. She turned her daughter around about the same time. It was just us two, the whole Mother's Group.
Yeah.
I'm a black sheep of the Mother's Group. That's fine.
I turned my kids around probably earlier than they needed to, but it was for my sanity. And I suppose that's where we might wrap it up. Definitely wasn't a parenting what to do podcast. This is what we got through. So
no, please don't take anything we said as absolute gospel. Haidee's just dropped out again because the internet's fantastic. We're going to wrap it up here. I think we got through 40 minutes of a podcast without Haidee dropping out, though, so that's pretty good. Thank you so much for joining us today. That was a little bit more lighthearted. Please, if you have any parenting stories, any failures, with no judgment space here, any cracker stories, any of those things where you went, I'm not doing that as a parent, and then you did it anyway, let us know. Please share your stories. We're all just trying to get through. And parenting is not perfection. It's definitely not what Instagram puts out. So thank you so much for joining us. Have a great night. I hope you all have a beautiful week next week. All right. Thanks, guys.